So, what we have seen is the various scenes from movies like The Greatest Story Ever Told, Jesus Christ Superstar, um, The Last Temptation of Christ, Passion of the Christ, and then finally Killing Jesus. And to a scientific mind, to restate something I had already said to the people in this room until Zoe reminded me I needed to be recorded, thank you, was that the ancient mind was not concerned with scientific proof. They were not sitting like jurors in a courtroom waiting for irrefutable evidence beyond any reasonable doubt. That's not the point of Scripture. It's not the point of Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu Scripture. That's not its point. Do try to have your notes out, please. The point of Scripture and the point of much ancient literature isn't how things happen, isn't to prove that things happen. It is to explore why things happen. What is the meaning of those events? Now, I don't know if you got this when you were doing the Iliad and the Odyssey. I hope you did when you were doing the myths of Greece. But I hope you appreciate that the point of the story wasn't to prove that a guy named Theseus existed, or a minotaur, or the guy named Achilles was a moody guy, or that Priam grieved for his son, or that Odysseus was proud and then humbled, and that he learned lessons that were important. The point that I always got from the Odyssey, and I'm not nearly as familiar with the Iliad, is the moral lessons in it. And that's how I taught you. The law of hospitality, or xenia, the violations of that law, the loyalty that the men should have had to Odysseus with the bag of wind and didn't, and the price of their disloyalty. They were within eyesight of Ithaca and they got blown to the island of Circe, the other side of the world. To be angry is easy, but to be angry at the right man in the right way at the right time, that is difficult. Those lessons and so many more are to me what stand out about the Odyssey. What happened here? I'm going to focus on Pilate. And I chose this rather than the riot with the money changers, or the loaves and the fishes, or healing miracles, or the Sermon on the Mount, because this event is acknowledged by all people who tell stories of Jesus. Jesus is sentenced to death by the Roman authorities, the death of the worst kind that they could think of, crucifixion. This was done at the behest of the Jewish temple priests. And there is evidence that the Roman did not want to do it, or at least it's strong indications. Pontius Pilate, according to the Coptic Christians of Ethiopia, the oldest Christian church that is distinct, older than Catholicism, older than Greek Orthodoxy. The Coptic Christian Church of Ethiopia has Pontius Pilate as a saint because of what he did afterwards, because of the belief that he, by them, that he recanted and that he tried to dedicate his life to something new, which is not a story most Christians tell. The reason I include The Last Temptation of Christ, aside from the fact that I think it's an interesting take that is so different from all the others, is because I have been an administrator. I've been in the position to run a program, meet a budget of hundreds of thousands of dollars, hire people and fire people, establish training protocols, establish policies. I built a new program, residential program, for developmentally disabled adults who are being settled out of asylums. into community group homes. And I helped set up one company's group homes. I'm proud of that work. But having done it, I appreciate some things about politics that I wouldn't have if I hadn't had the experience of being an administrator/politician. To me, what happened in The Last Temptation, where they're in private talking, and Pilate says, "You know it's got to happen now, don't you?" He says it with regret, but he's got to do what he's got to do. I felt that way when I had to fire people. It was never pleasant. You'd think you'd feel some self-righteousness now. I never had somebody do something so criminal that I felt the need to fire them like that. It was always with regret because I was depriving them and their family of a job to make a living. They'd get other jobs, of course, but I couldn't have them keep working for me under circumstances. But it was never a pleasant thing. All of you, each of you, every single one of you, if you live through your teenage years, hopefully, if you will, God's will have people's lives in your hands. You might have your significant other, or your husband, or your wife, or your child. You might become a supervisor and have a variety of workers. Some of you may go into the military, and you might literally have the lives of your soldiers in your hands. You might become a doctor or a nurse. All of you are going to, in some way, shape, or form, be responsible for the lives of others. All of you have already affected the lives of others, not least of which are your parents, your grandparents, your family, your friends, your teachers, your priest or minister, your rabbi. All of you have affected the lives of others. To me, what stands out about Pilate is he knowingly does wrong because he wants to create or prevent a greater wrong. And it's said most clearly at the end of the last clip we saw from killing Jesus. Do this. One life for the lives of many. End this now. Pilate nods and the centurion says, "Crucify him." Again and again in these scenes, the faction of temple priests wants Jesus crucified, not stoned, which they could have ordered themselves, but crucified. Now, in a number of them, you see two men, Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, who are members of the Sanhedrin, who are opposed to the attack on Jesus, who are opposed to the arrest. And they are shown in different ways in different movies. So in no way does Scripture damn all the Sanhedrin. Some of the Sanhedrin appreciate that this is not a lawful trial. Lawful trials happen in the temple of hewn room, the room of hewn stone. Normal trials do not happen at night, and they don't happen in the private homes of anyone, even the high priest. So there are Jews who stand out in this story as being against what is happening. But the dominant faction of temple priests is interested in political power, and they see Jesus as a threat to this. They also see Jesus as somebody who is stupid enough to perjure him or to convict himself by admitting that he believes he's the Messiah. Remember, they were expecting a Messiah to come with magic, flashing of light from one end of the horizon to the other end of the horizon, bringing the day of the Lord. And here's this fellow from Nazareth, the former carpenter, who tells stories and heals people and is captured by temple guards. How is it possible that the Messiah could be captured by temple guards? And when faced by the priests, he doesn't go and do some miracle. He does not meet their description. So the faction of temple priests want to get rid of Jesus. And in effect, what they do is they put Pilate into a blackmail situation. Pilate was the Roman governor that on his first day of office was stupid enough to march his legion, the 10th Fretenses, into Jerusalem with their eagles. When his predecessor said, this is a bad idea, and you are going to cause needless trouble. And because those eagles were there were riots where people died. What does Caesar want out of his provinces? What does Augustus, or in this case Tiberius Caesar, the second Roman emperor, what does he want from his governors? He wants peace, and he wants order, and he wants tax money, and he wants obedient subjects. Law and order. And what does Pilate do? He's so arrogant in his earliest days that he provokes a riot that otherwise wouldn't have happened. Again and again, Pilate is caught being ham-fisted, being too stubborn for his own good. And ultimately, he's going to get replaced for it. A few years after the execution of Jesus, Pilate gets caught in a scandal where Jews riot again, and Pilate is blamed for it, and he's fired. He's replaced. The blackmail is simple. Do what we want. Crucify this fellow, and we won't riot on this issue. But if you don't do what we want, you can expect the streets to erupt. You can expect to have to kill dozens of us or more. You can expect that the countryside might rise up. This might be the spark that lights this powder keg of a country on fire. And Pilate, it will be your fault because you wouldn't deal with us. We are the temple priests. We are the leading faction among the temple priests. We are telling you that if you want to partner with us, continue partnering with us, continue to benefit from our cooperation, you must do what we want. And what we want in this case is for you to sentence a man to crucify that you would never otherwise sacrifice. Why does this matter to you or me or us? Because at that time when you will have the lives of others in your hands, and I don't know what form it'll take, you will be tempted to cut corners. You will be tempted to do something that you know in your heart is wrong because it will be expedient. It will make things easier. Somebody who's blackmailing you, you pay them off. Somebody who's making trouble, you appease them. You give something that you shouldn't give to somebody who doesn't deserve it. You punish somebody who didn't do anything wrong, who doesn't deserve it, to avoid causing a scene. You do what your mind and your heart, your judgment and your conscience tells you is wrong. That will be the temptation, and all of you will be faced with it. And it's a different sort of temptation than do I take up smoking or drinking. Those are personal choices that have personal consequences. These consequences will happen to other people because of you. And in those moments, you will decide what kind of person you really are. Are you the kind of person that does what's right, come what may? Or are you the kind of person that compromises? You give a little to get a little. The ends justify the means. And there are arguments on both sides. But I can tell you, if you haven't completely destroyed your conscience by then, you'll know what feels wrong and what feels right. That's the situation Pilate was in. And it's very easy for me to say, Pilate shouldn't have killed him, because I'm not in his shoes. But he shouldn't have killed him. He knew it was wrong. He did it because he accepted the premise that if you take this man's life, this innocent man's life, you will prevent riots that will get you replaced. He was blackmailed. I recommend that you think about this before you assume any power. Because temptation will come. And pressure will be placed upon you to knowingly do wrong for the sake of expediency. Every single one of you. It's something that's pretty universal, especially for people who can hack it at this school. B-Day people, stay. A-Day people, go. Have a nice day. And you at home, See the clips.